DFS, D-Chin Nation. We are back to another season. The NFL season is upon us, only a few weeks away. We got preseason going on. Preseason DFS is going off, and we are back. So that means it's time for the DFS D-Chin Nation to do what we do, and that's to bring the fire content. Joined, as always, and I can't let go of the tradition. Even though Ryan's not here, we'll talk about that in a second. Matty Buckets, Matty 2v2, as he would say. DFS, how you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Yeah, we gotta try to fill in Ryan's shoes. He's got some big ones to fill, but as being the host of the show, but that's all right. We can kind of tag team it and get us to where we need to be. But yeah, man, I'm doing good. I know we kind of talked pre-show. We've got just finalizing some baseball this year. That season's starting to wind down, getting into the playoff run for those guys over in the baseball streets. But Field of Dreams was cool tonight, and we got preseason football on our TV as well. So that's good to see too. So yeah, man, it's getting here. It's week one will be here before you know it, and I'm excited to take a way too early look at week one pricing.
Absolutely. So just some minor details. As you can tell, it is a two-man show because Ryan went to the fucking dark side and went to FanDuel. I mean, shout out to him. I'm happy for him. He deserves it. I know if you've been listening, some people already know this. But if you're just now tuning back in or riding with us, Ryan will not be here this year because he went over to FanDuel, the Stone Cold Worst. But it's fine. I'm proud of him for the move that he made. He's going to be doing content for them. He did say that he is going to try to make it on for the Thanksgiving show, which, if people know, the Thanksgiving slate is always like a 4-hour podcast that we talk about 3 games. I don't know why, but it's the way it goes. And he said he's also going to try to make it on for the playoffs. So we'll see. Hopefully, Ryan is still family. Ryan has been with TFA for almost the beginning, outside of probably the first year. He's like family to me. I bust his balls. He told me not to kill him too much. I won't. We'll leave it at that. So, Ryan, you're always welcome on the DFS DJ Nation airwaves. Couldn't be where we're at right now without you. So this is a big shoe to fill and a big seat to fill because Ryan does an excellent job at this, at being the host and kind of keeping everything moving. So I do appreciate everything that he's done, and I think he's going to crush it where he goes.
Yeah. If you guys do play FanDuel,
don't play FanDuel.
But if you do play FanDuel, make sure you guys check out Ryan's content. Ryan's, we're always in the DMs talking with Ryan, talking slates. He's always got, a contrarian mindset. And now he's going to be specializing in that scoring system over there. So definitely make sure you guys check out his content if you do play FanDuel.
But again, don't play FanDuel.
Yeah, absolutely. FanDuel is the worst. I can't do it. But hey, week one. So let's talk about it, right? Well, actually, before you do, one quick thing. As you see on the right-hand side, join our Discord community. We were on Slack. We decided to switch over from Slack to Discord because it's 2021. Nobody uses Slack anymore. And so we jumped over to Slack. Our guy, Matt Giraldi, this morning, just I wake up at 6:30 in the morning, and all of a sudden I have a novel of him writing up the slate for everybody, which is awesome, or at least the Eagles side. So, jump over there. It's absolutely free to join. So I hope to see everybody over there. Like I said, we'll put a link in the show notes. We'll put a link in the description for everybody to join. So with that being said, what everybody's here for, let's talk about it. Week one, right? I will say this. It is the hardest thing to not just blow your bankroll all on week one. We're excited. DFS is back, and you just want to play all the monies, all the slate. But as we know, you got to have some patience because it's a long year. And week one is the hardest to project, and there's not everything you have to go off of is from last season and what you've seen in the preseason and training camp, right? So how do you handle week one?
Yeah, and I feel like you're going to hear me say this for 18 weeks because we have 18 weeks this year. But week one more so than any other week, pay attention to ownerships because like you just said, Kev. There's a lot of uncertainty with workloads outside of, the absolute studs that are going to get just spoon-fed targets and carries. But if there's a fringe guy who, maybe had a good camp and he's starting to pick up steam in week one. Those are the guys you just want to come off of and just, hopefully variance swings in your favor. So definitely pay attention to ownerships, and also don't go crazy over the rookies. We are going to talk about some rookies probably, especially, once the actual week one gets here, we can dive in a little more because we will have, up-to-date information. But all of the rookies are very, very cheap. So don't go too rookie crazy here in week one. But, you can use one or two that are very cheap as well that can, help you fit in some of the higher price studs. So, week one is very interesting. Just try to not be too chalky with it.
Absolutely. And like I said, try to whatever you normally play on a week, I would just suggest to play like half that, or a quarter of that, because week one is just so all over the place, and we just don't really know what to make of everything. And I tend to think that some people too tend to get caught up in all the the redrafts and all that process.
Mm-hmm.
If you play redrafts and everything else, this guy that you love, so they're coming in, and so you decide to play in week one and everything else. So
everything is completely matchup based.
Yes,
throw all your redraft stuff out the window. It is literally just a 1 week. I don't care what you do. The weeks 2 through 18. It is what you are going to do for me this week. And I see Walito already throwing in Kamara into the chat, and I really want to talk about that game briefly once we get to running backs. Just because I think another important aspect, especially early in the year, is trying to not rely very heavily on last year's defensive rankings and how teams performed. You have to pay attention to personnel changes, and you have to pay attention to coaching changes. Those are very, very big key points that we can take advantage of early in the year that, other people may just look at a opposing rank and see, oh, Aaron Jones against the Saints facing the number 2 defense, and the Saints haven't, they don't allow any rushing production over the last 4 years. I'm fading Aaron Jones against the Saints, but we'll talk about that. So,
absolutely. So, actually, let's just jump right into it. Let's dive into week one. As you know, if you are new here, what we do that's different, a lot of people will either they may just hit on a couple players, and then at each position they move on, or people go game by game. We would be here for 7 hours if we went game by game and try to talk about all this. So what we do, we go position by position, and we kind of talk about it. It's kind of go a little bit more in depth. However, on this show, we are just going to go much more just a zoom out view of kind of where we stand right now, because when week one gets here, we will jump in far more in depth and really be much more zoned in on certain plays. So let's start with it. The quarterbacks, when I first got this, I'm always excited. It's like Christmas for me whenever pricing drops for week one. We always get it usually about a month ahead, and I always go and I have to go through and look at it and, build a fake lineup just to kind of see where I'm standing. And right now, if you look at just week one pricing, I mean, we have the normal Pat Mahomes at 8,100, Kyler Murray at 7,600, Josh Allen at 7,400, Russell Wilson. What stood out to you whenever you first started looking at quarterback?
To me, I'm going to have a hard time coming off these top four guys: Mahomes, Murray, Josh Allen, and Russell Wilson. There are like one or two guys that kind of stand out, that are a little bit cheaper, like maybe a Jalen Hurts who has rushing upside, but man, it's so hard to get off these studs at QB, because when they have their ceiling games, especially guys like Kyler Murray, when Kyler Murray has a ceiling game, he's got 40-point upside. And same with Mahomes. Mahomes doesn't do as much rushing as Kyler Murray does, obviously, but Mahomes can go out and throw 6 touchdowns, whereas Murray can throw for 300 yards and 4 scores and have 100 yards rushing and run one in as well. So, especially in tournaments, which is all I play, I'm chasing pure upside. And a lot of times you just don't get that upside with the cheaper QBs. So I tend to gravitate to the high priced quarterbacks, and that's probably what I'll end up doing, especially week one. Some of these cheaper QBs may not get a chance to, just let loose in week one. So we'll see how that goes.
Absolutely. And shout out Walito, as always. The D frickin' Nation pod is back, baby. Yes, it is. Appreciate the super chat, Walito. You need to reach out to me. I think I need to find a bigger job for you over here at TFA, #1 supporter. And see if maybe see if maybe you could expand your role instead of just being a super fan and maybe join the club and be a part of the boys. We'll just reach out to me. We got to figure something out. Anyways, so when I first started looking at this slate, there's a few things that really stood out to me. One is some of the quarterbacks that I feel like are a little mispriced, that I was somewhat surprised that like Trevor Lawrence was already $6,200. I get that he's playing against Houston. It's a great matchup, but that still seems a little steep. But the first thing that really stood out to me when I was scrolling through this was seeing that Baker Mayfield was only $5,900. And I get it. I don't think that he has maybe necessarily the similar type of ceiling as, the top guys do. But I love this game in general. And I feel like that we're going to see people go more towards chalk of like the Bengals, where people have already been talking about like Joe Burrow, who's only $5,700, who's cheaper. People love the Bengals this year. And some of these other quarterbacks that are cheaper than he is. And I just don't think that people are going to overlook this. And I feel like that if you look at even the weapons we have here, Odell is cheap, Jarvis is cheap, Nick Chubb's only $7,200. Like, I feel like there's this game is going to be high scoring. It's in Kansas City. Anytime you're playing the Chiefs, you're going to have to score a ton of points. It's probably going to be a little bit of revenge because obviously the Chiefs knocked them out of the playoffs last year, and so I like this game. Obviously, the Chiefs side, we don't have to talk. I mean, obviously, it's the Chiefs. You're going to want to get a hold of that. But I feel like going with the Browns is going to be a contrarian stack, and then running it back with Tyreek or Travis Kelce. How do you feel? Are you on that, or just other guys you just rather play and just stay away from that?
No, anytime you're playing against Kansas City, that's definitely a game you can stack up. Because that Kansas City always has that 37-34 type shootout potential for a full game. So I don't hate that at all. I guess, obviously, you're gonna. So for the listeners out there, Kev plays more teams than I do. I tend to play usually 3 teams, sometimes 5 teams if it's the right week for it. But usually I hover in the 3-team range, whereas Kev will, play in the 10, 15, or 20 team range. So Kev's going to have exposure to more players than I am. And with that being said, I have to be a little more picky. And so like when I assess, a game like Cleveland versus Kansas City, I have to figure out, okay, well, what's the likelihood that the Browns score 34 points, 35 points? And if they do that, how do they get there? And, I can see a lot of the production going through Chubb if that, if they do get that type of points, because we know Chubb that he breaks off long ones and we can attack Kansas City on the ground. They haven't really made too many personnel changes that really signifies otherwise. So, it's just little things like that you assess for a full stacking situation. But yeah, anytime you play Kansas City, if Kansas City jumps out to a quick, 10-0, 14-0 lead, obviously the Browns are going to have to throw and come back from behind. But at the same time, Cleveland's defense is better this year. They did deal with a lot of injuries last year, and they made some personnel upgrades. So I am a believer in the Cleveland defense this year. And I'm not saying they're going to stop Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs offense, but it is week 1. They're not going to be in midseason form with the defense being better. There is, that slight concern that the Chiefs don't get out to that super early lead, scoring a bunch of points early. So there's pros and cons to both. They're cheap and there is upside for that game to just blow up. But I do have some slight concerns going the other way too.
Well, I will say this, that the Chiefs offense, mainly their offensive line, is completely revamped this year. It's going to be probably a top 5 unit this year with the additions of Joe Thuney and Orlando Brown. And then the right guard they got was a 6th-round pick. He has been crushing it in camp. He actually started training camp as the starter. And now LDT, their right guard from 2 years ago, because he obviously opted out last year, was a surgeon and went and fought COVID. He's hurt. And so it's looking like it's going to be Trey Smith who's going to take over, and then possibly Mike Rimmers in the right guard or right tackle spot. But this offensive line is going to be night and day better than what it was last year. It is the best offensive line that Patrick Mahomes is going to have in his career. They made that their focal point this offseason, was to improve that offensive line, especially after what happened to them in the Super Bowl. So I will say that is something that's going in their favor. But in terms of the quarterback this year, Walito asked, how much is Lamar Jackson? and he is not on this slate, right? Because they play. Is that Sunday night or Monday Night Football?
They're the Monday night game, I think.
Yeah, so that game is not on the slate, and so we don't have to worry about Lamar Jackson on this slate. But who are some other quarterbacks that you are eyeing?
So I know you're going to end up talking about Carson Wentz if he returns in Week 1 against Seattle. I'm actually going to flip it to the other side of that game, and if Wentz returns, I think that's a good time to load up on some Russell Wilson because I mean, dude, Seattle has no running backs outside of Chris Carson. I mean, what are they going to rely on? Rashad Penny and Homer and all these guys? No. Last year, Russell Wilson in the first 8 games of the year, he scored 0 games, had less than 25 points in fantasy. And there is nothing that tells you that he can't come out and do that again. I mean, yes, teams did start making adjustments and the offense just continued to run the same thing that they were running early in the year. And that's why we saw a big drop off. But there was also some worse O-line play where Russ was, he was under pressure a lot more in the second half of the year. So I think we could see a big bounce back spot for Russ. So I think he's very interesting and may go overlooked, being priced that high with Josh Allen and Kyler Murray and Patrick Mahomes right there, right above him. So I think Russ is very interesting, and Seattle is so easy to stack when you're loading up that passing attack. So it's very, very easy to do that. And I mean, you can just run it back with like a Pittman, or, if you think the Colts are in a shootout. I mean, we know Carson Wentz loves to target the running back position. So if you wanted to load up either a Jonathan Taylor or Nyheim Hines, assuming Quinton Nelson's back as well on that offensive line. So yeah, I think that Indy Seattle game is very interesting. And I know you can go ahead and spit your love for Carson Wentz, but I do have love on the other side of the ball, which, could be a good sign for a shootout.
Yeah. It sounds like that we got the news, what was it, a couple of days ago, that sounds like Carson Wentz and Quinton Nelson are on track to start Week 1. We will see if that comes to fruition. But, obviously that there for a minute, there was the 5 to 12 week, which is the weirdest timetable I've ever seen for an injury to return from. But, now that it sounds like they're going to be back, like this Colts offense is at, just like it is in season-long leagues, it is absolutely in DFS Week 1. I mean, Carson Wentz is cheap. Michael Pittman, I think, is 4,100. Paris Campbell's 3,700, I believe. Mm-hmm. This offense is completely just way, 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 way too cheap. I mean, Carson Wentz is only 5,600. And so going against Seattle, which, again, if people are looking at last year's results, especially the last 5 or 6 weeks of the season, people are going to say, oh, man, the Seahawks defense turned it around. They were way better. But no, if you just really look at the quarterbacks they were playing and the teams they were playing, they were just fucking awful, right? And so I think this is a good spot, and I do think this could absolutely be a shootout here. And, getting a really cheap stack, being able to load up on somebody like Christian McCaffrey, who's going to be playing, I believe, the Jets, being able to get up to him. And if you want to play another high-priced running back or a Travis Kelce at tight end or whatever have you, right? I feel like this is a good opportunity to be able to do that. And just how cheap this offense is. I mean, it's ridiculous that you could literally play, Wentz with Pittman and Campbell if you wanted to. Now, it's a big risk, right? Because at least with the wide receivers, because we don't necessarily know, I think, outside of Pittman, that you feel really confident, because you could also probably make a case for T.Y. Hilton if you wanted to for 1 week. But they don't really have a tight end where you have Jack Doyle and Mo Alley Cox, that could possibly be involved. And right now, but I feel like that at least that stack is so cheap that allows you to pretty much opens it up for you to do whatever it is that you want to do. You can run it back with Lockett or DK Metcalf. And, I do like this game quite a bit from, just attacking it and the pieces that you can get from it. Whether you want to stack this game or just get pieces from it, I'm probably going to have a lot of Michael Pittman because I just think that he's incredibly too cheap. He could end up with 10 targets Week 1, and it really wouldn't surprise me. So I do like him. Now, unless he somehow becomes chalk or something like that, which is possible, but I don't think he is with all the amount of wide receivers once we get there that are cheap. So I don't think that's going to happen with him. So I do like that game quite a bit. There's another game that is interesting too, or at least another quarterback, and that's Jimmy Garoppolo at $5,500 going against Detroit. So he's only 5,500. I think that is another cheap stack if you want to go with Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle in a stack. Like I think that's another direction going against the Lions. The Lions are going to be terrible this year. They kind of blew it up. Jared Goff is now a quarterback, and so I do like getting some of that as well. Jimmy Garoppolo is capable of being a decent fantasy producer, so I do not mind that either. And then if I preface this, if Taysom Hill is the starting quarterback, do you have interest in that, considering his Konami code upside that he brings? And he's only $5,200. They're going to have to score points. They're playing Green Bay. They're going to have to be putting up a lot of points, and so he's got to get a lot of opportunities. And so at $5,200 for a guy that could get 100 rushing yards, like it's going to be hard. Like if he's the starter for Week 1, that it's going to be hard not to have some interest there at his price.
Yeah, I would definitely have interest in Taysom Hill at 5,200. It's a little different than playing like a Jalen Hurts at 6,400. Because the same type of player, but you're getting a $1,200 discount, and it's a $2,000 discount, almost $3,000 discount off Patrick Mahomes. So, while yes, Taysom Hill doesn't have the same ceiling as Mahomes, if those top guys only end up getting you 25 to 30, and Taysom goes out there and does rush for 100 yards and has a rushing score, he's going to end up with 25 fantasy points himself. And at 5,200, the extra salary you can get elsewhere is going to push him over the top as a great value play. So yeah, I will have interest in him if he is in fact named the starter. I love that Green Bay New Orleans game. That's that game, and Tennessee and Arizona are the two games I'm probably going to have a ton of exposure to. I think both of those games are the games that I have pegged as the mega shootouts as of right now. Still 4 to 5 weeks out, but those are the games I have circled for now.
Yeah, I mean the Arizona-Tennessee game does look pretty intriguing, because we know Tennessee's defense is not going to be very good this year. Or I shouldn't say we know. I should say it projected to be not very good this year, which is going to lead to them to have to throw the ball a lot more. And obviously, that's why I think one of the reasons precursors that they went out and got Julio Jones is because they're going to have to be able to throw the football. And surrounding Ryan Tannehill with A.J. Brown and Julio is obviously a smart move. But so I do like that game as well. Is there any other quarterbacks you want to talk about, or do we want to move on to running back?
I think it's definitely worth briefly mentioning Josh Allen, just from the fact that, the Bills have shown us that they will not run the football, and Zach Moss is hurt now as well. So, I mean, they basically have nobody to run the ball. Like Singletary is awful. And that Pittsburgh defense, I think, is going to regress a little bit, especially against the pass. So, Josh Allen and company may go under the radar a little bit in Week 1, because nobody wants to play anybody against the Steelers, and I think that's going to be a mistake. He's got 50 pass attempt upside. He's throwing the ball to Stephon Diggs and all those guys. So I do think that game is worth keeping an eye on as well.
Are you at least concerned at all playing at Pittsburgh defense?
No, I think that the Pittsburgh defense is going to take a slight step back this year. And I do think that just the personnel they have, they're going to be worse against the pass than they have been. And I think that that's something that we can take advantage of early in the year that people may be afraid to jump on, similar to it's a good segue into running back as well, similar to the Saints and all the starting defenders that they lost. Whether it be to retirement or just players going to different teams. Saints against the run, that's another defense that I think you're going to see people say, quoting stats from the last couple of years, saying you can't play Aaron Jones against them because the Saints don't allow 100-yard rushers, this and that. Like he's not going to produce, and it's just not true. I mean, they have like 3 or 4 rookies that are slated to start in key positions. Like you're talking defensive line in the middle of the line, like nose tackle, and like inside linebacker. Like those are like 2 of the biggest spots that help defend the run. And I think Aaron Jones can absolutely smash. Yes, he does have a hamstring issue, which is slightly concerning. So we're going to need to pay attention to that. But if he were to be on the shelf at all, I mean, A.J. Dillon would just be lock and load already. Week 1, 75% chalk week, A.J. Dillon. But no, I think that, I think Aaron Jones against the Saints is where I'm going to look to start my teams at running back if I'm not, starting them with Christian McCaffrey. And you can even play both with some of the salary savings we have on this slate. Like you mentioned the 49ers. There's no reason Brandon Ayuk should be less than $6K. And he's 5,700, I think. So there's salary savers that have monster upside all over the board. So I think you can definitely fit in a couple of these stud running backs. And running back is the position that I would want to not take chances on, like the guys that have, are possibly have less than 50% of the role and, aren't going to play a ton of snaps. I would try to get in, or especially early in the years, jam in the stud running backs and try to rotate in some pass catching value.
Well, let's jump over to running back. But first, Ashton, no, there is no Monday Night Football games on the main slate of DFS. You're looking at, it's basically the noon games and the 3 o'clock game. Once upon a time, we used to get the Sunday night game in there, which was magnificent. You used to have the late night hammer and all, we would always talk about. But now they took that away from us. Those sorry bastards, because I do miss having that Sunday night game, that sweat once you got into Sunday night, trying to make those late swaps into Sunday night and everything else, trying to figure out where you're at, especially if you're, up top. So it does, on one hand, I guess it makes, the sweat a little bit shorter, but at the same time, having it in there was awesome. But I think we did have because of COVID, we had one slate last year. We actually had the Sunday night football game, which was amazing.
Seahawks. Who did they play? Was it Seahawks Arizona?
That might be it. I can't remember who it was.
It was a good one because it was very popular.
Yeah, and so unfortunately we haven't seen that much anymore. They took it away from us. So no. Now since you are new here, I mean there are different slates you can play. You don't have to just play the main slate. You can play early only. You can play the afternoon only slate, which that's kind of what I do. I play main slate, and then I also. I built some lineups for early only, and then I built some lineups for afternoon only, because you get it allows you to get exposure to different players, and where I think that ownership percentages changes as well in terms of early and only and how kind of things. So there is some definite edge to be had in those early only. Now the type of contests aren't as great in the early in the afternoon only, because it's just usually a little bit smaller compared to the main slate. Like you don't have the milli maker and all that stuff that you have on there. But I would say if this is your first year playing DFS, do not play in the milli maker. Stay away from the huge 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 people contest, because you're not going to win. I know it looks intriguing to go out there and sign up for those. And, if you want to throw a couple bullets in there, fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But you are much better off. And kind of Maddie has kind of steered me in the direction and got me more into like the single entries, the 3 entry maxes. Even the most I usually will play now is a 20 entry max tournament, just because I think you have a better edge there. And you're not worried about usually going up against that 1%, sub 1% owned guy who just out of nowhere goes off, and then you have no shot because you didn't own that guy. Usually in a single entry and a 3 entry max, you don't have to worry about those things.
Correct, because the goal of tournaments is to come in like the top 1% score, because that's where the big payouts are. And if you don't have, like Kev said, if you don't have that random guy that nobody is even thinking about playing, that 1% of the field plays in a milli maker. Which a milli maker, for reference, since you're new, is generally in like the 230,000 entrant range. So like the odds that you win that tournament are basically zero. So it is my recommendation, and what I play, especially since I only play 3 teams on most weeks, is I will enter the 3 entry max contest. And what that means is you are only allowed to enter 3 teams at a maximum in that contest. No one user can have more than 3 entries in that contest. So it puts your 3 entries on an even playing field with everybody else's 1 to 3 entries, as opposed to those bigger contests where a lot of people will enter 150 teams. And I would recommend also, staying towards the lower, entering less teams, just so you're not overwhelmed at the start, because at least football is not as bad as basketball and baseball with, where you can have late scratches and whatnot. But if you're going to end up making a lot of changes and you have to worry about lineup correlation and all that, having less teams to worry about is definitely a plus for that. So if you're just going to play one team, I would recommend, single entry tournaments, and you can even search and filter for single entry tournaments. And if you're going to play a couple teams, if you want to play 3 teams, they've got 3 entry maxes. Some weeks they'll roll out 5 entry maxes. And then outside of that, you're going to see 20 entry max tournaments. So definitely would stick to those the lower entry tournaments, because you have a better chance of winning them. And that's the name of the game in playing tournaments, is you're going for a takedown, because you could win one tournament in the year and lose the rest of the season. You're probably still going to come out ahead, just because the payout is so massive. It's like you're looking at over 100x your entry. So you could lose if you play the same amount every week. After you win 100x, I mean, you're still up 83x if you lose every week after week 1. So that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, and I mean, another aspect too is cash games. You can play cash. I mean, I don't play cash. I know you don't really play cash. I think that playing in single entry and the 3 entry max is kind of a nice balance between the two.
It's a hybrid. Yeah, it's a hybrid.
And so, but you also have a much, if you hit, like, you're not just winning your $10, or whatever it is, the 50-50 or whatever that you may join in cash games. Because there would be nothing worse than to have a lineup that is good, that just smashes, and that you just had it in a cash game and you didn't have it in a tournament. If you would have had it in a tournament, you would have taken it down. So my
thing with cash games these days is there's so much good content out now.
People are so sharp.
The obvious plays are so obvious, and in cash games, you're just like, well, I can't not play this guy, even though he's going to be 80% owned. Whereas if you know that guy's going to be 40 to 50% owned in a tournament, you're not playing him, because when that guy busts, now you only have to beat 50% of the field instead of 100% of the field. So, tournament mindset is just easier to get away from playing those guys that are going to be massively owned. Whereas cash games, you just feel obligated to play them. And it's because they're good plays, right? Like I said, there's just so much good content out there now that, everybody is on the obvious cash game plays. Like if the star running back, if Zeke gets hurt, let's say Zeke gets hurt on a Thursday, and Tony Pollard is 4K min price. Tony Pollard in cash games is going to be, probably 80 or 90% owned. And in tournaments, you're probably looking at 65 to 70%. And that's a play, you can say, okay, I'm going to play him on, one of my 3 teams and just pray that, he doesn't fall into the end zone and just ends up with like 8 points, and approach like that. So, tournaments are just tournaments are like a hybrid between, at least the smaller ones are a hybrid between the large field and the cash games. So you can kind of get off of those very obvious plays a little bit.
And I would just say this, and then we can move on. One other thing, cash games, that you're probably going to run into now is that when you get people who are just running train lineups through them, and you are just getting pushed out, because all these people are running 150 lineups of the same lineup and just knocking your ass out, because you're probably not playing 150 in these cash games. And so I just can't do it. I would rather play in tournaments and have a higher upside. And like I said, go find the cheap ones. You don't have to play in the big tournaments. Go find the cheap ones. Play in the quarter. Play in the quarter jukebox or whatever it is. You're not playing a bunch of money, but you can play a bunch of lineups in it, and but you're not also investing a lot of money. If you hit, I think if you win the quarter, I think it's like 1,000 or 500 or something like that to purse. Not bad, So if you win, your investment's low, and it's a good way to at least start and kind of build a little small bankroll and stuff like that. Or playing I think if there's a 20 entry max for $1, the dollar 20 entry max, I think it's 10K to first. That's not a bad one, but that's also like a 300,000. So that's not one but it's, again, if you're wanting to play a 20 entry max, something like that, go into that, where again, the most you're putting up is $20. So anyway, that's kind of the way that I would go about it, or try to find some. There's a few other tournaments we'll probably talk about once we get into week one, once they drop, of ones you probably should or shouldn't enter. So, anyways, let's jump over to running back. We've talked about this enough. So, obviously, Christian McCaffrey, which I would say Christian McCaffrey is cheap compared to what we normally get Christian McCaffrey at. Normally, Christian McCaffrey is always over 10K. You're getting him at 9,500 against the Jets, I might add. And so 9,500 for Christian McCaffrey. Dalvin Cook is 9,100, the only two running backs at 9K. Derrick Henry at 8,800. No, thank you. I will be out on that at $8,800. I just cannot play a running back that has no pass catching upside at that price. And then you have Alvin Kamara at 8,600, Jonathan Taylor at 8K, Saquon at 7,800, Nick Chubb at 72, Alvin Kamara at 7K, and that is the end of the 7K guys. Then you have some 6K guys like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Aaron Jones at 6,800 feels way too cheap. James Robinson. What in the world is James Robinson doing up here at 6,400? I get it, how good he was last year, but not this year. And then, really, if you want to make a case, we can make a case that Travis Etienne is kind of a pretty slick value at 4,900. That I don't mind that if you wanted to go there. But the running back that I will say that immediately stood out to me, because it was one of the guys I scrolled through because I want to know exactly where this guy was and how much he was going to cost week one. And he's $5,900, and his name is Antonio Gibson. And I just think that's too cheap for what Antonio Gibson's upside is. Yes, J.D. McKissic is there, and J.D. McKissic is probably going to be involved as a pass catcher. But I do think we see Antonio Gibson take another step forward this year and be much more involved. If you look at him last year, I think he only played like 20 snaps, 20 total snaps on third down last year. Now, some of that makes sense if you really think about it, because at Memphis, he wasn't utilized at all as really as a running back. He was more of a wide receiver at Memphis. He had very, very, very little opportunity. So he wasn't going to be somebody who was going to be able to be nuanced and pick, pass protection and stuff like that, where it made more sense to use J.D. McKissic there. But we're talking about Antonio Gibson, 6 foot, 220 plus pounds. Like, believe me, they want to use him over the guy who's 5'9", 190 in J.D. McKissic, right? Or 200, whatever J.D. McKissic is. So at that price, now it's not a great matchup against the Chargers defense, who's the Chargers defense should be pretty good this year. But still at that price, I'm going to take some swings at Antonio Gibson at 5,900.
Yeah, I can already tell that my week is going to come down to deciding how much Antonio Gibson to have at 5,900. It's just, I feel like he's going to end up popular because he's got a 5 at the beginning of his salary, whereas if he was in the 6s, he might not be, just because of that subconscious feeling you get about clicking a guy below 6K. But I will say, after you reeled off all these names and a lot of these guys are cheap, like why is Aaron Jones below 7K? Why is Antonio Gibson below 6K? You've got McCaffrey and Dalvin Cook at the top. They're below 10K. I think it's a 3 running back week in the running back in the flex. We'll see how the builds go and what injuries shake up. But I'm leaning right now currently 3 running backs per build. And even Clyde Edwards-Helaire, we just kind of briefly skipped over him, but I think his pass catching role is may even take a spike up from what it was last year. And he was still seeing, almost 6 targets a game. So I think that he's in a very good spot, despite, Cleveland's defense being a little bit better, but those pass catching running backs on a full PPR side are just so valuable. So that's definitely something you want to keep an eye out for. And then also a situation I want to monitor is how the Cardinals are going to split their running back touches, because Chase Edmonds is 4,600 and James Conner is below that. Where is he at? Is he 4K? Is he min price? I was just on him and lost him. 45.
45.
So,
45.
Yeah, so they're both right there at 4,500. Connor's been dealing with a toe and was just placed on the COVID reserve list. So definitely something to monitor there. But, both of those guys are very, very cheap. So on teams where you're not playing Kyler Murray and you still want exposure to that Cardinals offense, I think playing some touchdown variance roulette and getting one of those running backs in there, I would probably side with Connor because he's going to get the goal line roll. Unless for whatever reason he's not playing, then Chase Edmonds would be a smash play. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of running backs to like in week 1.
No, for sure. And I guess it should be mentioned that James Conner does not have COVID. He was a close contact. And so, yeah, he's just sitting out for that until, they get that rolled out. But Walito, you want to know how much Joe Mixon is? Joe Mixon is 6,200, which is also appealing for a running back who gets around 80 to 85% of touches out of a backfield. I will say that Minnesota's defense is going to be better than it was last year. They had some players that were out last year. And so they made a lot of improvements along that defense. So that defense isn't going to be as bad as it was last year. Not that the defense was terrible, but it certainly wasn't the defense we've come to expect with Mike Zimmer. But so I don't know if I would be going all out of my way to load up on Joe Mixon, though I do love the price, and the workload is definitely going to be there.
Yeah, I like Mixon too, and my reason is solely for the fact that when you get to wide receiver, you'll see just how cheap the Bengals wide receivers are, and with how cheap Burrow is, I think the Cincinnati passing attack is going to end up popular, and if that's the case, Mixon makes a great pivot to kind of offset that popular passing attack, whereas you can just fade the offense as a whole and just hope the Bengals don't score more than 20 points, or if you don't see a way that happens, and you want to fade that Cincy passing attack if it is popular, then you just play Joe Mixon. Because he's too cheap. 6,200 for his role is cheap.
No, for sure. Absolutely. I just wanted to mention that this Vikings defense isn't they went out. Daniel Hunter obviously is back, which is absolutely massive to not have him last year. Because of an injury. And then, they went out and signed Patrick Peterson. We'll see what he has left in the tank. They also brought in Bashaud Breeland, who has been a more than serviceable corner for the Chiefs. He's just never been given a long-term deal. Sheldon Richardson's there and as more for depth, but this defense is going to be better than what it was last year for sure, especially with just getting Daniel Hunter back is going to be massive for them. So, anyways, I don't mind 6,200 for him. I just think that the opportunity is certainly there. But I would also make a case why not just play Najee Harris, who's only $100 more at 6,300, who is arguably in a better situation, at least a better game script and on a better offense, I guess. At least what should be early on. Obviously, if you look at the Steelers' offense last year, it was night and day, right? For the first half of the year, this offense was fantastic. A lot of fantasy points was scored. And then the second half, they just completely fell apart and collapsed. But getting Najee Harris back, it's one thing that they've talked about all offseason was getting that running back. And that's why they went out and it was no secret that they were going to take a running back early. And getting Najee Harris here in this backfield, and as long as he's going to be there, I think he's probably going to see 80-85% of the back touches in this backfield. It is what Mike Tomlin has done historically. Whenever he has a workhorse back, you even talk about guys like Stephen Ridley that he did it with, and D'Angelo Williams. Anytime when Le'Veon Bell went down, D'Angelo Williams stepped right in and got 20-25 touches per game. It's just what Mike Tomlin does, and getting a running back like that at 6,200. Against Buffalo. Buffalo is not a defense that really scares me all that much in terms of being able to run against them or anything like that. And so Najee Harris is going to see as much workload as he possibly can. He's also a fantastic pass catcher out of the backfield. So 6,300 Najee Harris, I don't mind.
Yeah, I'm good with that too.
So, and then, some of these other running backs, I don't understand why the Cardinals running backs are as cheap as they are. Some situations that we may have to monitor. DeAndre Swift continues to deal with a groin injury. If somehow he's not able to play week 1, you talked about some chalk, like Jamal Williams could definitely be pretty chalky because he's only 4,500. Now it is going against San Francisco. It's not. I don't think it's good chalk, and we could have a conversation much like we did about Mike Davis last year, what's good chalk and what's bad chalk. But I think we could save that for week 1 because we still have a long ways to go to figure that out. But I will say, though, Austin Eckler at 7K. I get that it's going against Washington, and Washington has a magnificent defense. But as a pass catching running back at only 7K,
he's still going to catch like 8 to 10 passes.
Yes. So I do like him. I think that that is a price that might be the cheapest we see all year for Austin Eckler if everything goes well for him.
I just think this is a 3 running back week. Like, so many of these guys are in such good spots, and not even good spots, but just guaranteed, locked in, like good roles.
Yeah. I mean, even a guy like, I think most people, everybody's got to scroll right past Miles Sanders, 6,500 going against Atlanta. Bad defense. I know that, there's mixed feelings about Miles Sanders for this entire year, but at least for week 1, 18 to 20 touches is right there in the range of possibility going against an Atlanta defense in a dome. So, I think that game could also have a little bit of a sneaky shootout to it going against the Falcons who have no defense once again. And so I don't mind, Miles Sanders there at 6,500. Like, there's just a lot. Like, I think one thing I'll say that going back to last year's slate, like last year's slate was okay, but like there wasn't like a lot of just like, man, really good match. I feel like this year on this week 1, they did a really good job because there's a lot of really good matchups heading into week 1. Where there's a lot of different ways that you can target. We're not looking at like a 2 or 3 game slate where it's like, okay, these are the games, we're narrowing in, and then you might want to pick off a couple pieces from here and there. Like this, all across the board, there is just really, really good matchups and really good places to exploit.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, like Walito's asking about Mostert against the Lions week 1. I mean, how are the Lions even going to score any points against San Francisco, or is San Francisco just going to play with a 21-point lead the whole game? Like, and we know Shanahan will just turn around and hand the ball off with Jimmy G at quarterback 40 plus times. Now, granted, it's going to be a committee with Trey Sermon as well, but I mean, Mostert's one of the fastest running backs in the NFL, and he absolutely could break the slate with 200-yard rushing game out of nowhere. So, yeah, I don't hate that at all.
Yeah, I would probably agree that it's probably going to be a committee with Trey Sermon. I mean, they have more than just him. They have Wayne Gallman and just a plethora of running backs.
And
there.
We've seen them do like a three running back committee, like in the same game, like for the last 2 years. So, like I always get whenever I'm talking about Kyle Shanahan, I can't remember the running back's name that caught the game-winning touchdown, but that was his like first snap of the entire game. And they said that they had a play drawn up just for him. It was Jeff Wilson, I think. They had a play drawn up just for him in a game-winning situation down near the goal line. And he ended up catching the game-winning touchdown. That's just what Kyle Shanahan does. Like, he will rotate guys in and he gets the matchups that he wants. So, but yeah, I don't see how the Lions keep it close. With San Fran, that Lions offense is going to be very bad, especially if Swift is hurt as well. So,
yeah, more than likely. I will say, I mean, the Lions' offensive line is going to be elite this year. They were already really, really good last year, and then added Penny Sewell in the first round, top 5 pick. It's only going to make things better here. The offensive line
just don't have any weapons. I mean, they've got
we're talking about Tyrell Williams. We're talking about
Jared Goff,
Amon-Ra St. Brown. We're talking about Rashad Perriman. I mean, TJ Hawkinson. TJ Hawk. Hawkinson's going to get as many targets as that man can get. But I will say, though, Jared Goff has shown the ability to be able to support two wide receivers. We've seen it over the years, Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp. And so, there's worse quarterbacks, I guess, but not many but I don't know really what to make of this offense, of this Lions offense, especially if DeAndre Swift is out or hurt, because it's really, how we haven't got to tight ends. And so, but like, how chalky do you think TJ Hawkins is going to be? Because he could see relatively 10 to 15 targets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, he'll definitely be popular. I agree.
We don't have Darren Waller on this slate either.
Yeah. I think Kelsey's going to be 1,000,000% owned, but for good reason.
Yeah.
I guess maybe the only thing would be the matchup. Like, people will see San Francisco's name and get scared a little bit of playing.
And just play George Kittle.
Yeah.
But I feel like
His
though,
kill's
if
pretty
you
cheap,
were
isn't
to
he?
do a San Francisco stack, right? And let's say you think that I don't hate running it back with TJ Hawkinson.
That's probably the only line I would run it back with.
Yeah, because I mean, I guess DeAndre Swift, if he's healthy and he's playing, I guess you can make a case for it just as his pass catching upside is so massive. I guess, but I just think there's better running backs that I would much rather play than DeAndre Swift, going against San Francisco. So, I mean, I would. Well, actually, do you have any? Look, let's do this. Do you have any more running backs you want to talk about?
No, I'm good.
Yeah. So, and once again, we're going to get much more in depth in this once we get to week one. I know we're just kind of skimming over some of the stuff, but once week one is here, we will definitely do a full deep dive into this much more. So let's jump over to the wide receivers because I would have to imagine. I mean, I haven't went out of my way to go figure out how much the Detroit pass catchers are, but I'm pretty sure they're probably outside of Hawkinson. They're probably all men.
Yeah, Hawkinson is 4,900 at tight end. Let's see, Tyrell it's 4,400. I think I can just click this game, to be honest. Yeah, here we go.
I cannot believe Tyrell Williams is 4,400, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and then Perryman's 3,500, Cephas 3,200, St. Brown 3K.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're all very cheap.
Tyrell.
I will not end up there, but I also don't play as many teams as you do.
Yeah, I can't. There's no way I'll have any of that.
No.
Anyway, let's jump over to the wide receivers. We'll start at the top. Devontae Adams is 8,300. Tyreek is 8,200. Calvin Ridley 7,900. DeAndre Hopkins is 7,800. Justin Jefferson 7,700. Stephon Diggs at 7,600. DK Metcalf 7,500. AJ Brown 7,100. Adam Thielen 7K. It's a little bit too much for me. Cannot do that. But Keenan Allen 6,900. That seems a little too cheap. Tyler Lockett at 6,700. Michael Thomas, he is out. Yeah, that's right. Terry McLaurin, 6,400. Deontay Johnson, 6,300. You have Juju at 62. DJ Moore, 6,100. Jarvis Landry at 6K seems just a little aggressive. 5,900 for Debo. And then, as you mentioned, Ayuk is 5,700.
It's stupid. He shouldn't be anything less than 6,500. And he's 5,700. Like, he's an alpha. He absolutely is going to smash. Like, he is very good. Ayuk is very good. And he's playing Detroit. And he's 5,700.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get it. 5,700. I felt like, he's actually cheaper than Debo.
Yeah.
And to me, he's the number one wide receiver on the 49ers.
Mm-hmm.
So that one doesn't compute. Some ones that I would say that I don't understand that don't really make sense is Jacoby Myers is 5,100. I don't know. Like, I feel like, he's more expensive than Jamar Chase. He's more expensive than Jerry Jeudy. He's more expensive than Laviska Shenault. I don't know. There's other ones. Will Fuller. Will Fuller is only $4,600. I don't know. I'm going to have a lot of Will Fuller. I'm going to tell you that right now. I don't give a shit about Stephon Gilmore's old ass. Okay? I do not understand how Will Fuller is only $4,600.
Do you see what I mean, too, with these Cincinnati pricing? Tyler Boyd, 5,200. Jamar Chase, 4,800. And T. Higgins, 4,700. Like, against that quote.
But that's why I think they're going to be so expensive.
They're going to be popular.
But I think they're going to be so damn chalky.
Yep.
Everybody's going to be loading up on them.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, also Akash in chat makes a good point. Will Fuller is suspended week 1 from last year's.
Oh, he's still – I didn't even –
Yeah, he's got a 1-game suspension for his drugs, PEDs.
I completely forgot about that. Okay, well, never mind. Game off. Don't mess with Will Fuller. Anyway, but like I was saying, I agree though. But I think this Cincinnati team is just going to be chalk. I know as soon as the pricing came out, that was kind of what people were talking about, right? Yep. Was oh man, I cannot believe how cheap the Cincinnati offense is. And, everybody's been beating the drum all offseason for the Cincinnati offense and everybody being hyped up for it. And so I just think it's going to be overowned. And if you want to take a shot on some of these guys, I'm fine with it. But I just feel like that where the pricing is or where the ownership percentage is going to come in, I would rather just get leverage and just maybe even fade this offense. Because like I said, this Minnesota defense is going to be better this year than what it was last year.
That game just feels very trappy for whatever reason. Like, I don't even feel confident paying $9,100 for Dalvin Cook when I can pay $9,500 for McCaffrey and then pay like low sixes for or upper fives and low sixes for like Antonio Gibson and Joe Mixon and Aaron Jones and Austin Eckler, like guys like that. I don't know. The Minnesota-Cincinnati game just feels trappy to me. Feels like it's going to be really slow. But
yeah,
since he's going to throw a lot, I mean.
Just really quick, do the prices change closer to week one? They do not. These prices are locked in. Nothing changes. And so that's why, if a big injury goes down to a running back, that player is all of a sudden going to become chalk because if they're likely going to be like men, depending on who it is, who steps in as the starter. I just now thought about it. How much is Michael Carter?
$4K min price for a running back.
See, we haven't dug in deep enough yet,
We'll get there on actual week one.
Yeah, because I just hit me on I was like, I didn't remember talking about Michael Carter. I was like, oh, okay, he's min priced. All right. So, anyways, no, these prices do not change. And yes, I know, I get it. I'm an idiot. Will Fuller is suspended week one. So, anyway, but as far as the wide receivers as a whole, do you feel the need to pay up for these guys, or would you rather pay up? Are you looking to pay up at running back and pay down at these wide receivers with some of these wide receiver pricings that we have?
I'm probably going to mix and match both because, like we talked about, there's some 6K running backs that are in really good roles, and some are in very good matchups as well. And then you've got like a 7,600 Stephon Diggs who has 40-point upside. As well, which it feels too cheap. Like he should be over 8K up there with Devontae Adams, in my opinion. But then you got guys like Ayuk, who is 5,700, who can go for 100 yards and a touchdown on 7 or 8 catches. So yeah, the one thing I've been trying to force myself not to do is playing popular fringe wide receivers, which I think we're going to end up seeing some chalky for mid fours wide receivers this in week one because people are trying to jam in the value to get those top running backs. So if it is a week like that, like where people are jamming in McCaffrey and Dalvin Cook and then just paying down for like the cheap Bengals or, some of these other, like maybe Cole Beasley at 4,400 or something like that, then those are weeks too, where to be different, I'll pay up at wide receiver and try to get some value at running back. If it makes sense. I'm not just going to do it just to do it, but I mean, there are cheap options at both positions. So I don't think you have to lock yourself into one or the other this week. So I think it's a, like I said at the top of the show, week one, especially with this slate, with all of these teams and these matchups, this go around more so than even last year, probably, pay attention to ownerships and just try to have a different build than what the field's going to have. And that's the name of the game in DFS. Embrace the variance. You can project all you want, but at the end of the day, it's a high variance game where a lot of things happen. People catch 3 touchdowns and some people in great matchups catch 0 touchdowns. So that's just how it goes. So I can't stress ownership percentages enough, especially in week one.
Yeah. So Trey, Quan, and Calloway. I think Callaway is sub 4K. I think he's 37. I think I was looking at it earlier just to kind of see where he was coming in. I believe that is correct.
Also, a nugget from the Green Bay defense from our boy Debro. He dropped this in our DMs. He said that Jaire Alexander is going to shadow a lot this year. So if that happens, I assume. I mean, I don't know. Is he going to go into the slot? Because Traquan plays slot mostly, doesn't he?
I don't think. I just feel like this would be.
I'm pretty sure Traquan plays slot. At least he did last year.
But I just don't think this would be the game that he shadows. Like, do you need to shadow Traquan Smith? Do you need to shadow Marquez?
Yes,
I would
because
think
they have nobody else after that.
Yeah, I would think they would just play. I feel like they would
away.
just play their sides in this game, and save the shadowing for another week. But Marquez Calloway is 3,400. I was incorrect. So he's cheaper than what I thought he was. But there's a lot of really cheap wide receivers. Like, we didn't even talk about like the rookies that outside of Jamar Chase is only 4,800, and T Higgins at 4,700 is ridiculous. But wide receiver, like, you have Terrace Marshall, who's absolutely free. Who I think he is I think he is 3K. Marcus Callaway, we just talked about, it's only 3,400. Jalen Waddle is only 3,600. If you feel some way about him.
You know what Stack has you get exposure to one of the highest scoring teams on the slate and one of the top quarterbacks, and is insanely cheap at the wide receiver position. Arizona. You can play
Rondale Moore is super cheap.
You can play min price Rondale Moore at 3K, who's going to be their starting slot wide receiver, and you can play $3,800 AJ Green with Kyler Murray, and you can play all the dudes with that. And your run back is pretty easy too, because Tennessee has three passing options. It's AJ Brown, Julio Jones, and Anthony Ferkser. So that is a very easy game to stack, and it's not that expensive if you're not jamming in DeAndre Hopkins.
No, I agree. I mean, it doesn't take much to get up there. I mean, even if you want to play them, then you play one of these cheaper guys to offset the price.
Yeah, I'm just piggybacking off the fact that there's going to be some good value to go around.
For sure. I mean, it's what I was talking about earlier with Michael Pittman. Michael Pittman's only 4,100. They're number one wide receiver. Paris Campbell is 3,700. Marvin Jones is only $3,600 going against Houston. Like, that seems like an incredible price to me to pay for him. He is getting a little bit older. What?
No, Chark's 58.
Oh, this Jacksonville, if you want to attack, because you have Trevor Lawrence, who's 62, and then the rest of this pass catching offense. I mean, even Laviska, I think he's 51, I believe.
Yeah,
or 5K. So he's 5K flat. I mean, so going against Houston, there's a lot to be desired. I mean, I think where I think people are going to come in, and this would be my opinion, is I think that people pay up at running back, whether it's Dalvin or it's Christian McCaffrey, and really pay up at running back, because I think a lot of people are going to be paying down at wide receiver because there's so much value down here. It's ridiculous. Like I said, the rookies are extremely cheap. Even guys, like I said, like Michael Pittman, Jerry Jeudy is only $4,800.
Fulgham too, if Devontae Smith is going to miss time.
I mean, Devontae Smith himself is only $4,500. Jalen Reagor, he's starting to get some buzz. He's only $3,700. Like I said, Paris Campbell, I brought him up multiple times. I mean, I'm sure there's other guys here that we're missing and that we're not even thinking about because, we're just kind of scrolling through here, taking a look at the pricing. Quez Watkins has gotten a lot of buzz. He actually scored that 79-yard touchdown. But he's been getting a ton of buzz through camp. There's just a lot of really cheap wide receivers here. Yeah, and usually at the 3K range, they're kind of very much dart throws. And Marvin Jones doesn't feel like a dart throw. Like, Marvin Jones feels like he could get 8 to 10 targets in week 1.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of options for sure. I agree. So,
there's going to be a lot of digging, $4,800 from McCole Hardman. Don't even mind that. But so I think the grand scheme of things is we got a lot of work out. It's a lot to go through here, in the next couple of weeks to get this figured out because there is a lot of value down here at the wide receivers.
I think it could get even worse too, because I think there are going to be injuries. I mean, injuries pop up every year in preseason, and more value is just gonna come available. So, like I said, and we'll continue to say, you guys will hear me say it all year long. I can't stress ownership percentages enough. paying attention to who's going to be popular and just making sure that your build is a unique build.
Yeah, I mean, I am much more of a little bit more contrarian. I'm going to be more apt to steer clear, especially if it's like heavy chalk. Try to figure out a way to get around that chalk and not eat that chalk. But sometimes you just don't have a choice; you have to eat that chalk. But I'm like I've already kind of talked about. I will probably always remember the Mike Davis conversation, the heated, spirited Mike Davis conversation we had.
He was a good play.
He was not a good play. He still didn't. He still didn't work out. I think he scored like 10 fantasy points.
It was like 8.
Yeah, it was bad. Play. But he was like what? He was a good play. He was what, min price 4K and what?
Yeah, he was min price as a starting running back against Chicago.
Yeah. So anyway,
and he sucked ass.
We'll talk about that more later, another time. So I guess. Do you have anything else to talk about with wide receiver?
No, let's jump to tight end. I don't think we need to wrap up with. I don't even think that we need to dive into defense on this.
Oh no. I do have one question about defense, but we don't need to go into the defenses. Travis Kelce, you can play him every single week. There's not a week that you want to stay away from Travis Kelce, but he's $8,300. You're going to pay that premium for him every single time. And he pretty much laps the field when it comes to pricing. George Kittle is $6,300, and then there's another big drop to TJ Hawkinson at $4,900, Dallas Goedert $4,800, Hunter Henry at $4,700. Like, I don't know, did they just not change their algorithm at all, or take into consideration that he is no longer with the Chargers? Because I don't understand him being
and he's hurt.
Yeah, he's hurt, but he's also like the 5th or 6th highest tight end on the slate.
5th.
Yeah, 5th. Yeah, okay. So ridiculous. And then you have Logan Thomas at $4,600, Gesicki's $4,500, Kyle Pitts, $4,400.
That one's interesting. And this is such a perfect example, right? Don't take your redraft approach into week 1 DFS, because I'm pretty sure neither you nor I have drafted any Kyle Pitts in the top 35, 40 picks, just because we feel that that's too high for where he's going currently. But in DFS, when he's $4,400 at a weak tight end position, he's basically a big wide receiver who's going to see should see a lot of volume. I mean, that's a good play there at that price. So
to me, when it comes to the tight end, you're either paying up for that guaranteed volume in Travis Kelce, right? And probably George Kittle and Waller. If Waller's on the slate, obviously the Ravens and the Raiders game's not on the slate. That is a Monday night game, so we're not worried about that. So with the other tight ends, it is much more. If that guy gets 3 catches for 30 yards and a touchdown, you're oh yeah, okay,
the no pants dance.
You're excited,
no pants dance, yeah.
Yes, and because tight ends are cheap, and
touchdown hunting is the name of the game for value tight ends.
Yes, and I could already, by looking at this, tell you who's going to be chalk, and that is going to be Adam Troutman, who is $2,900 on this slate. And so he is definitely going to be chalky as fuck because of that price.
Yep.
And just looking through some of this, I think some other interesting names could be Gerald Everett at $3,400. If you want to stack this Seahawks and get a little bit different in your stack, and go Russell Wilson, DK, and then maybe Gerald Everett at $3,400 instead of playing Tyler Lockett. If you wanted to do that, I don't think that is a crazy way you could go. Anthony Ferkshire is $3,200. Robert Tonyan's only $4,200 going against the Saints. I'm sure I could probably keep going here. I'm sure there's some other names that are going to pop out to you. Dan Arnold.
Dan Arnold.
I mean,
$2,600.
I don't know if you know this or not. And I love being here with you because when I bring him up on the TFA show with Cody or Robbie or anything.
Nobody appreciates him.
I know. Nobody appreciates him like we do.
Get made fun of.
I know. I get made fun of every time. Get out of here with Dan Arnold. But there's been a lot of buzz about Dan Arnold. Okay? He's been getting a lot of buzz.
Passes. He gets air yards.
Team air yards, Arnold, $2,600.
Dan air yards Arnold. Air Yarnold.
He goes down as one of the greatest calls on this show. I will never forget.
That was amazing.
And it really was just the whole process of where we started. I kind of brought
Yes.
him up as this crazy play. And then you started looking into him.
You mentioned his name, and I was like, I've never heard of this guy before. And we just looked into him and together, and I was like, wait a second. Wait a second. You're onto something here. And sure enough, he caught a touchdown on the Thanksgiving slate.
And it was pure.
That was great.
It was because he was less than 1% owned. I remember, if I remember correctly,
because nobody knew who he was. He was like third string tight end at the time. Nobody knew who he was, but Jared Cook or somebody was out. Or
he was, and it was
who did he play
Josh
for?
Hill.
I don't even remember what team was. He was on the Saints, wasn't he?
Yeah, because I remember Ryan was all over Josh Hill.
Yeah,
he was like, I'm not playing this Darren Arnold guy. I ain't
Yeah.
doing it. Give me Josh Hill. I think Josh Hill had one catch.
Oh man, that was great.
It was great.
No, but yeah, there's a comment in chat too about Jonnu if Hunter Henry's out, and I mean we've kind of seen some highlights from preseason or from training camp, and then tonight as well. Like Jonnu is getting they've handed the ball off to him and given him some very short yards after catch opportunities, which is where he thrives. And if they're going to continuously do that, with Cam Newton's not going to stretch the ball down the field a ton anymore. If you're going to make a lot of high percentage throws, a good amount of them can go to Jonnu Smith. So I don't hate that at all.
No, because kind of like you mentioned, but I think he's going to be utilized a lot as a wide receiver, and so especially if Hunter Henry's out, you could really. But I think he ends up being pretty popular. But that price, 4,100, don't hate that whatsoever.
Because that's an offense that has historically used tight ends very, very well, especially athletic ones. They just didn't have one last year to use.
No, for sure. I mean, they were. I don't even remember who they had last year at tight end. I mean, it was nobody.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you.
So, I mean, I at least for me, that's kind of what stands out to me. I don't think we need to get too far into the weeds on, the exact plays and, who we're looking at. But some of the guys that really stood out to me was obviously was Adam Troutman at $2,900. But I feel like as great of a play that is, I think you're probably looking at some pretty heavy ownership on Adam Troutman at only $2,900. So,
yep.
Is there any other guys you want to bring up?
No, we pretty much touched on all of them that I was looking at.
Okay. So as far as defense,
Ferkser, I briefly mentioned him, but I think he's a great run back in that Tennessee Arizona game because he's going to play big slot. With no
I guess we still need to see what happens with Julio Jones, whether is he going to be active or not in that game. I mean, it sounds like he should be okay.
I would rather Julio play because that opens up the defense a little more.
And I think
Ferkser showed that he can catch passes last year, so I don't have a concern with that. And he's shown that Tannehill will trust him and go to him, especially near the goal line. So, and he's cheap too. He's near man price, isn't he?
Yeah, I think he's 2,800.
He's 32, so he's not going to get any ownership at 3,200. Everybody's just going to play Troutman for 300 less.
Yeah. The only thing I want to bring up, about defense, I don't want to talk about who you want to play, but one area that I think that we really hit on last year, but I think we should bring it up again, especially if first time listening to the show, would be you can feel absolutely comfortable playing a 2K terrible defense, right? We did it multiple times. You want to play the Bengals, play the Bengals. You want to play the Jets, play the Jets at 2K, right? You're trying to get all the dudes in, right? So, punting defense, yes, there are going to be some weeks that it could come back and bite you in the ass if there's a defense that goes out and scores 30. They happen. It happens. If it does happen, so be it. But more often than not, paying down at that low, and I would say never should you ever pay up for a really, really expensive defense, like a 4K defense, like there is on this slate, which you have the 49ers who are $4,200. No thanks. Just pay down, save yourself that money because we're trying to fit in all the dudes, and getting the defense in is generally not right. And I will also say is you could play defenses and what should be a shootout, right? Because that's just more opportunities to get fumbles, to get sacks, to get pick sixes. So,
Correct.
like, just because it appears it's going to be a shootout, a lot of people are like, oh, I'm not going to play defense in that game because it's going to be a lot of points scored. Like, no, more opportunities for that defense to be able to get that, like pick sixes and stuff like that. So, you can absolutely play defenses like that.
Yeah, 100% agree. And just one extra point to add to that is defensive scoring, like defensive touchdowns especially, are so random that, you can't plant your flag really on anything on the defensive side of fantasy scoring. And it's just save the salary there and play guys that you can project at quarterback, running back, and wide receiver. Yeah, it's just such, like, you can have a good defensive game and give up 10 points and get like 3 sacks. And if you don't have any turnovers for whatever reason, like let's just say the opposing team just punts the whole game and they don't turn the ball over. Like if Tyrod Taylor were to start he's the Indy backup, right? Or no, he's Houston. So if Tyrod Taylor's starting for Houston, he's a quarterback that historically does not turn the ball over. Like, yes, that Houston offense is going to be really bad, but Tyrod takes care of the football, and they probably just punt a lot of times. And so, yes, that the defense playing against Houston may only give up 10 points and get 3 or 4 sacks, but I mean that's going to translate to like what, 7 fantasy points. I can get 2 fantasy points from the lowest salary defense there is, and it's no different. But yet I can save however much. Who's Houston playing? Are they even on this slate?
Yeah, playing Jacksonville.
Yeah, so the Jaguars, what are they? Oh, they're 2,700. So Jaguars are going to be popular against Houston. Of course they are. So that's a situation you can even fade. Like fading high-owned defenses is another way to get leverage on the field because, like we just said, defense is unpredictable in terms of fantasy scoring. You want sacks, interceptions, fumbles, and defensive touchdowns. And the most correlation that I've seen is getting pressure on the quarterback turns to worse throws, which lead to interceptions, and getting pressure on the quarterback also leads to sacks, which can lead to sack fumbles, and sack fumbles can lead to sack fumble recovery touchdowns. So getting pressure on the quarterback is what I would focus on when trying to pick a defense. You just want to, try to, like Kev said, facing an offense that's going to throw the ball a lot leads to more opportunities for you to get defensive fantasy points, because when a team is just running the ball, odds are they're not going to fumble. And if they fumble, it's not going to be more than one time. That's just how football works. Like the running backs don't fumble very much. But interceptions happen multiple times every game. So that's where I would focus my defensive attention is on cheap defenses that can get a little bit of pressure on the quarterback.
Absolutely agree. So
in Grant.
Yeah. So we said we weren't going to spend very much time on defense, and here we are. But so that is kind of the overlook of the slate. Obviously, like I said, and we've said this probably 10 times now, that we just wanted to kind of take our first look, kind of see where things stand with week 1. There's still a lot that's going to change. We still have all the preseason. We've only had a couple preseason games happen. There's going to be injuries in preseason. Hopefully there isn't. Hopefully all the stars stay healthy and we don't lose anybody. But it's almost certain that somebody's got to get hurt. Now, maybe it's not a season-ending injury. Maybe it's out 4 to 6 weeks or what have you. But we'll see. But almost always an injury is going to occur. And so, our minds and the way things are going to go is definitely going to change between now and then.
Yep.
So I do want to mention that. There was one question in here that I thought that we could answer before. What is a good formula? Get lucky on cheap guys mixed in with a few studs. Like I would say this, at least in my opinion, is on a week-to-week basis, it changes. There's weeks that it looks like you want to play scrubs and studs. There's other weeks where you want to go far more balanced. It just really depends on how the slate goes. There's always going to be luck in this, okay? To say that there's not luck, it is. But I would say more often than not, having a really strong process of with lineup construction is concerned, I think is the best way to go. And being disciplined. Don't just play somebody, or don't just, how do I put this? Don't just One, if there's a week that you, I feel like that stay absolutely patient and do not blow your money. As like I said, we talked about week 1, but also just on any given week, right? Try to, if you say you're going to play 15% of your bankroll every single week, do that every single week. Don't get wild with it and stray away from that. But at the end of the day, having a really strong process and how you do things, set up a routine on how you do this. And that depends on how in depth you want to go. If you're just doing this for fun, throw in some lineups and have some fun and watch football, right? Like this doesn't have to be. But if you're trying to grind out some money and win, and I think really experimenting with different type of lineup constructions, whether that because there's all different ways you can do this, right? Like on any given week, I think what was it last year? I think almost every week, there was a. Do you remember what it was like? Was it? I was trying to remember. There was like a certain lineup construction every week that almost won every single week. Just about every because there wasn't many weeks last year where it was like 2 tight ends, but I think it was. I can't remember what it was. Now I'm just rambling back.
Probably just play Travis Kelce.
No, it wasn't with tight ends. I'm talking about. It was like it was in terms of a stack. It's I think it was playing 2 wide receivers and then running it back with another opposing wide receiver. One just about every single week last year in terms of the Millie Maker. I think is what it was.
Probably. I don't remember seeing it, but that makes sense.
Regardless of that, that's what I'm getting at is essentially there's just so many different ways you can do this. So if you want to play 2 tight ends, if you feel really great about it, do it. If you want to, there's different ways. Stacking is not just, stacking your quarterback with a wide receiver. Okay. You can stack with your opposing running back or with a running back. It is certainly a way you could go. I don't think that it's as plus EV, but it's certainly a way that you could do that, especially if it's a pass catching running back. And I think they can definitely be a part of the stack. Stacking a defense with a wide receiver that returns punts, I think is also another sneaky way you could go to get that double dip is in there, like a McCole Hardman with a Chiefs defense is a stack you could go with. But
yeah, and I'll just add to that. I think something that's very important too is telling yourself a story based on the guys that you're playing. So, for example, let's say you're rostering Patrick Mahomes, and he's going to throw. If you're paying up for him, you need him to throw for probably close to 400 yards and 4 touchdowns for him to really pay off that salary up there. Okay, well if that happens, if he pays off his salary, who is he going to bring with him along with that ceiling game? Well, it's probably going to be one or both of Tyreek and Kelce. And then probably, there's going to be other touchdowns randomly sprinkled in there too. Like maybe CEH catches one. Maybe there's one of the cheap, like maybe McCole Hardman, if Mahomes is throwing for 450 and 4, maybe McCole Hardman caught a long touchdown pass. So he would be a good value that week for you. Just telling yourself a story based on the outcome that you're betting on is how I've always tried to approach it. Because you don't want to contradict the upside. The upside is what you're chasing in order to take down tournaments. You don't want to be playing guys that contradict the upside scenario for that. So yes, we saw last year a couple times, Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill were in winning lineups together. But that is very rare that that's going to happen unless, the Titans score like 40 plus points, which they can do it. They're a good offense. They're probably not going to be as good this year as they have been, but we'll see. But that's kind of contradictory to pay $9,000 for a running back that doesn't catch passes and then stacking the quarterback with him. Because then you're just really hoping for, your running back to score 2 to 3 touchdowns and your quarterback to throw 3 or 4 touchdowns. And that's just a lot of touchdowns to go around. And I would just be happy betting on that to not happen. So those are just kind of the lineup construction decisions you want to make, like telling yourself, okay, I'm picking this guy. If he hits his ceiling and goes for monster upside here, what else is going to happen in this game or on this team that I need to get exposure to correlate with that? That's what we say when we talk about correlation, kind of the things you want to think about.
Absolutely. And just, following targets. Like if you're more often than not, if you're going after, let's say, a wide receiver who only maybe gets 2 or 3 targets a game, like it's probably not a smart play, right? Because he has to, basically house call a touchdown for him to be relevant, even though he may be $3,400 in a good matchup. Like, just understand that the chances of that hitting is very low. Now, if it does, if you're able to hit on that and one of those guys pays off, then you are setting yourself apart from the field. And really, like you mentioned, I mean, ownership is so key and so critical in building lineups and tournaments, because that's how you're going to find edge. If you see somebody that because there's a lot of places you can go find the ownership percentage or at least projected ownership percentage for these guys. And, if you see, I don't know, let's say Travis Kelce is only going to be 8% owned this week, but Darren Waller is going to be 40% owned or something like that this week. Fading Darren Waller and going with the cheaper guy, fading the chalk, because I am very much into to me, especially if we're talking about a player, kind of like what we talked about with Mike Davis, right? Earlier, we kind of joked around about it. But the reason I was against Mike Davis was because he was going to be mega chalk in a bad matchup. But I understood the fact that he was going to be popular, and that at what he was able to bring you, the fact that because he was 4K, he opens up other things that you're able to play and give you that opportunity, right? But for me, one, I knew he was going to be chalk. And so for me, I would rather fade that chalk. And because if that chalk doesn't hit, especially, and I don't know if that's the best example, well, especially if it's a guy that's, let's say, you can see running backs that are going to be 60% owned. And so I would much rather go below the floor, go below that number, well below that number, or just fade it completely. And if it pays off, I am cooking with grease at that point, because I have faded that, and 60% of lineups likely are sunk for that, right? Or if an injury happens, whatever. Or what other thing you could do is go overweight to the field to get an edge instead of just going. You should, to me, if a guy's going to be chalk, I'm not going to just go at him. Let's say he's going to be 40% owned. Just go all in at that point. Right? Just go all in, play him in 100%, and then you get all that edge over that.
At that point.
Yeah.
I agree.
So, either way.
And two, when you've got like a cheap chalk guy like that, it creates obvious builds for the week. Like, because if everybody, 60% of the field starting with a 4K running back, okay, well, they're going to pair McCaffrey with it. And okay, they've got this salary left for the rest of their team. And that's just, it creates obvious builds. And you can very easily create a different build just by not playing that one chalk cheap guy.
Yeah. So, anyways, do you want to
build one size fit all? Yeah, we can. We can compare it to our actual week 1 team that we end up throwing in.
So, again, we at the end of every show, we build a lineup after kind of talking through all this, and we talk through this. And so let's go ahead and jump into it. We're going to build a Millie Maker team for week 1. And we'll kind of see where this team lands compared to where it lands actually right ahead of week 1. So why don't you go ahead and start things off?
Let's go. Well, I'm going to start it off how I want to start it off. And let's go with Kyler Murray. Especially if Connor is, if he's banged up with a toe or whatever, limited in any fashion, Murray's going to smash Tennessee.
Okay. So, well, I'm just gonna go the easy route. I'm gonna go DeAndre Hopkins at 7,800.
All right, let's go Rondale Moore. Round out the stack on the Arizona side.
At running back, I'm going to go. I want a part of this. I want a piece of this Kansas City game. So give me Clyde Edwards-Helaire at 6,600.
All right, and let's just, because I probably won't have a team without Christian McCaffrey on it, just go ahead and throw Christian McCaffrey on there too. So that leaves us 38.75, and we have wide receiver, tight end, flex, and defense left, which tight end and defense are going to be pretty cheap positions anyways. So there's still some wiggle room to play with some salary.
Well, I'm going to help us out then, and I'm going to lock in Anthony Berkshire at $3,200.
There you go. If I'm playing Kyler Murray, I think I'm just going to run back Ferkser as my run back. Just save salary and get you good exposure on the other side.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you end up taking us somewhere. Let's go with
Here, let's make this easier. Let's just lock in the Bengals at 2K.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at. I was seeing if there was any other super cheap defenses that kind of made sense.
So that leaves
unless
51.
you're going to go, probably Bills at 2,500 at home against Pittsburgh would be if I was not fully punting. That's who I would pick. But
yeah,
I'm good with just full punting.
Okay, so that leaves 5,150 for wide receiver and flex. So who were you going with? And I'll make the final decision on who the last guy is.
Do you have a $3,500 wide receiver that you like?
Sure.
Because I like Aaron Jones in the flex.
Well, give me Marquez, Calloway,
or
3,400.
or we can do Ayuk or Ayuk at wide receiver, and you can pick anybody in the flex for 4,600.
I like going Aaron Jones there. So
Jones and Callaway? All right.
It leaves us just enough. So that leaves the team as with $100 remaining salary: Kyler Murray, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Christian McCaffrey, DeAndre Hopkins, Rondale Moore, Marcus Callaway, Anthony Ferkser, Aaron Jones in the flex, and the Bengals defense. I like that team.
That's only two really low values. Because tight end and defense you're gonna pay down anyways. So then from there, it's Rondale Moore and Callaway, and then you fit in Murray, Edwards, McCaffrey, Hopkins, and Aaron Jones. That's 5 studs. I like that team. The team's kind of nasty, to be honest.
Yeah, so we're gonna lock. We'll lock that one in, and then we'll come back. We'll circle back around week 1 and see kind of how much different things are. Because by then, I think we'll be obviously a clearer picture of what things are going to look like week 1. And I think we might have a guest on week 1. See what old D-Bro's up to. The cousin of the DFS DJ Nation, who tends to show up, at least 5 or 6 times every year to be on shows, which I love because he is not just a very sharp guy, but I also like busting his balls. So
yeah, D-Bro is fun. I really love having him on.
Yeah.
So that'll be fun if he can join us.
So we'll see if we can get him locked up for week 1 for the build or for the show. So anyways, let's get out of here. It's been an hour and 30 minutes. I appreciate everybody. Like I said, even though we went an hour and a half, we really just kind of wanted to do a quick once over, kind of take a look at, the positions, where things stand. There's so much that's going to change between now and then. And so there's no real reason to really dive deep because all of this is going to get changed and thrown out the window as things change over the next 3 or 4 weeks before the season starts. So with that being said, I appreciate everybody checking out being here tonight, watching on YouTube, and people rocking with us on podcasts. We are back, and we will see you guys again here in a few weeks once week 1 is here, and then we will be here throughout the rest of the season through the Super Bowl, which is what we do. So we're about to win people that money. I am Kevin Steele. You can find me on Twitter at FantasyRat13, and you can find Matty Buckets 2v2 at Matty DFS. Till next time,
we out. We out.